My name is Darlene H. Scott, and I'm 30 years old. The Saturday morning sun cut a bright line across our wooden floor, catching dust motes in the air like tiny things pretending to be harmless. It was supposed to be our kind of morning, lazy and quiet. The coffee I brewed still hung in the apartment, warm and familiar, the kind of smell that once made me believe we were building a home instead of rehearsing the end of one. I was curled on the couch, scrolling through the news, feet tucked beneath me, enjoying the simple peace of a day with no plans. Caleb, however, was moving with a purpose that did not belong to a quiet Saturday. I watched him over the top of my phone. He stood at the full-length mirror by the door, not in his usual weekend hoodie and jeans, but in a fitted, charcoal button-down, dark trousers, and the watch he only wore when he wanted to look effortless after trying very hard. He had styled his hair. He had shaved carefully. He had put on the cologne I once told him made him smell dangerous, in a good way. That was not for errands. "You look nice," I said, setting my phone down. "Big plans?" He did not turn from the mirror. He adjusted his collar, studying his own reflection with a focus that made something small and cold wake up inside my chest. "Yeah, just meeting someone for coffee." The casual tone was too smooth, like paint over a cracked wall. "Oh," I said lightly. "Who with?" He finally glanced at me, but his eyes dropped almost immediately to his phone. His thumbs moved fast. A tiny smile pulled at the corner of his mouth, the kind he tried to hide and failed. "Vanessa." The name landed before the meaning did. Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend, the one from before me. The one with the perfect photos, the expensive taste, and the habit of circling back whenever another man stopped worshipping her properly. The one Caleb once called toxic. The one he said made him feel small, then somehow kept stored in his phone like an emergency exit. "Vanessa," I repeated, my mouth suddenly dry. "Okay, so we're meeting her?" This was the moment he was supposed to say yes, or at least pretend there was nothing strange about it. This was the moment I would have grumbled, fixed my hair, and gone along because partnership meant showing up, even when something made your stomach tighten. But Caleb looked at me then, really looked, and there was no apology in his face. No request, no softness, only a calm little superiority, as if he had already decided the rules and was waiting to see whether I would embarrass myself by objecting. "We're just catching up," he said. Then he paused, long enough to make sure I felt the floor under me disappear. "You're not invited." The apartment went silent. The coffee scent turned bitter. The sunlight no longer felt warm. That sentence did not sound like information. It sounded like a door being locked from the other side. I felt the receipt in my pocket. The jeweler's receipt. The custom ring I had ordered 6 months ago, saving quietly, planning carefully. I was going to propose that night. His favorite meal, candles on this same floor, me kneeling in that same golden strip of sun, asking him to build the rest of our lives with me. And he had just told me I was not invited into his. I saw the future in one clean, brutal flash. If I objected, I would be controlling. If I stayed quiet, I would be smaller. If I accepted this, it would become the first of many locked doors I would be expected to stand outside with a smile. So I did not argue. I looked at the man I had almost promised forever to, and for the first time, he looked like a stranger wearing my future. "Understood," I said. Caleb blinked, almost disappointed that I had not given him a fight. Then he grabbed his keys, slipped into the hallway, and closed the door behind him. The click of the latch was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood in the sunlit apartment, the ghost of his cologne still in the air, and pulled the receipt from my pocket. The time for confusion was over. The time for action had begun. Understood was not just a word. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock. The lock was around everything I had been saving for Caleb. My patience, my future, my forgiveness. The version of me that still believed disrespect could be explained if you found the right angle. The hurt was there, of course. It moved through me like weather, hot and violent. But I put it behind glass. I did not pace. I did not cry. I did not call a friend and ask if I was overreacting. I pulled the jeweler's receipt from my pocket, smoothed it flat on the counter, and looked at the elegant logo printed above the description. 14K white gold, custom solitaire band, sapphire accent, final pickup scheduled for today. I dialed the number before my hands could learn to shake. The receptionist answered on the second ring. "Good morning, Bellamy Jewelers." My voice came out calm enough to belong to another woman. "Hello, my name is Darlene H. Scott. I have a custom ring order scheduled for pickup today. I need to cancel it and process a refund of the deposit to the original card." There was a tiny pause. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is everything all right?" I looked around the apartment, at the coffee mugs on the table, at Caleb's shoes by the door, at the sunlight where I had planned to kneel and be brave. "The engagement is off," I said. No sob, no explanation, just a fact. She processed the refund and told me it would take 3 to 5 business days. I thanked her, ended the call, and placed the receipt in the exact center of the kitchen counter, like a headstone for the future he had just killed. Then I packed. Not wildly, not like a woman falling apart, like a woman executing an extraction. I pulled my largest suitcase from the closet and took the moving boxes I had kept from my last apartment. I started with my clothes, my side of the closet, my drawers, my shoes lined neatly beneath the bed. I did not touch his things. I did not smell his shirts. I did not stare at the framed photo from our trip to the coast. Those were artifacts from a country I had already been exiled from. They had no power unless I stood there and worshipped them. I took what was mine: my laptop, my chargers, the books from my nightstand, my headphones, my grandmother's ceramic bowl from the kitchen shelf, the framed print I bought before Caleb moved in and started calling it ours. I left the television, the couch, the throw pillows he hated but never bothered replacing, the cookware we collected as a couple. Let him keep the props. I was taking the life. Each box felt like a verdict. Each zipper pulled shut felt cleaner than the last. I carried everything down to my car, load by load, the physical effort burning through the grief before it could settle in my bones. By the time the trunk and back seat were packed, the apartment had already changed shape. It was not home anymore. It was Caleb's place, with spaces where I used to exist. I did one final walkthrough. Bathroom clear, desk clear, closet empty. On the counter, the ring receipt waited where he would see it. I picked up my keys and the final box of toiletries, walked out, and did not lock the door behind me. That was his problem now. I blocked him before I started the car. His contact photo was one I had taken on a rainy afternoon, Caleb laughing under a crooked umbrella, looking like someone worth trusting. I stared at it for one last second, then tapped, "Block this caller." The phone asked if I was sure. I was. I did not drive away immediately. I waited across the lot, leaning against my car as evening settled over the street. When Caleb's sedan pulled in, he stepped out with a looseness in his body that told me coffee had become more than coffee. Maybe not physically, maybe worse, maybe emotionally. He looked pleased with himself, wrapped in the glow of being wanted by a woman from his past. Then he saw me, then the packed car. "Darlene," he said slowly, "what's with the boxes?" I held the last cardboard box against my hip and asked, "How is coffee?" The question confused him. "It was good. Why are you—" "We're done." His face changed, first disbelief, then irritation. You're breaking up with me because I had coffee with Vanessa? That's insane. No, I said. I'm leaving because you told me I wasn't invited into my own relationship. He scoffed. You're being controlling. You were dismissive, I corrected. There's a difference. His mouth twisted. So I worded something badly and you throw away our future? I looked toward the apartment window, then back at him. The future ended when you made a private room for your ex and put me outside the door. Caleb's anger rose when begging failed to appear. You'll regret this. No man is going to put up with this kind of insecurity. I opened my car door. Then it's good I'm not looking for a man who mistakes respect for permission. I placed the box on the passenger seat, got in, and started the engine. Caleb stood under the streetlight, furious and stunned, still waiting for the version of me who would explain herself until he felt powerful again. That version was gone. The first 48 hours were a study in silence. I checked into a bland hotel room on the other side of the city, the kind of place that smelled like antiseptic, carpet cleaner, and air conditioning that had been running since 1998. It was perfect. There were no memories there. No mug Caleb preferred. No chair where he sat scrolling through messages from women he claimed meant nothing. No patch of sunlight where I had almost asked a man to marry me while he was getting dressed for his ex-girlfriend. I opened my laptop on the small hotel desk and started searching apartments in neighborhoods Caleb never liked. Places with older brick buildings, noisy streets, coffee shops downstairs, and no version of him attached to the sidewalks. I ordered takeout, showered, and slept badly but honestly. Every time I woke up, I expected grief to hit me in the throat. Instead, there was a strange buzzing peace, like my body was still shocked by the absence of disrespect. It did not last. The first message came on the third day from an unknown number. I knew it was Caleb before I finished reading the first sentence. Darlene, this is crazy. Can we please talk? You're overreacting. It was just coffee. You're throwing away something real over a misunderstanding. I stared at the word misunderstanding and almost admired the speed of the rewrite. He had turned exclusion into confusion, cruelty into poor communication, and my leaving into the problem. I did not block the number immediately. I wanted to see the pattern clearly. So I deleted the message and went back to comparing floor plans. Later that night, he left a voicemail. His voice was different now, stripped of arrogance and dressed in trembling desperation. Darlene, please pick up. Okay, fine, I get it. You're mad. I was stupid. Vanessa was nothing. It meant nothing. She's gone. She left town. I don't know what I was thinking. Ego, maybe. I made a huge mistake. Please, I need you. The apartment is so quiet. Just call me back. I saved that voicemail, not because I wanted to hear his voice again, but because truth has a way of changing clothes when guilty people get an audience. In the parking lot, he had called me controlling. Now he was admitting ego. That was not love. That was consequence finally introducing itself. By morning, the third message arrived, and this one was pure venom. Fine, be that way. You were always too insecure for me anyway. You can't handle a man with a life outside you. You'll realize what you lost and come crawling back, and when you do, I'll laugh. There he was. Not the wounded boyfriend. Not the misunderstood man who worded it badly. The real Caleb. The one who thought boundaries were attacks and respect was something women owed him when he felt cornered. I screenshotted it, blocked the number, and felt another door seal shut. Then Derek called. Derek was Caleb's closest friend, a man who treated loyalty like a license to excuse whatever behavior benefited his side. I answered on speaker while folding clothes into the hotel dresser, because apparently I was living there long enough to stop treating my suitcase like a wound. Darlene, he said, voice thick with fake concern. Look, I know Caleb messed up, but he's spiraling. He's not eating. He's barely sleeping. You need to talk to him. Is there a point to this call? I asked. He paused, irritated that I had skipped the part where I defended myself. The point is, he made a mistake. People make mistakes. Vanessa got in his head. A good woman would hear him out. A good man would not tell his girlfriend she wasn't invited while getting dressed for his ex. Derek scoffed. So that's it? You're just going to punish him forever? No, I said. I'm going to leave him alone with the life he chose. I ended the call and blocked him too. The final email slipped through 2 days later from an account I did not recognize. The subject line read, "I get it now." Caleb wrote that he had gone to the jeweler. He did not know what he expected to find, but they told him the ring order had been canceled and the deposit refunded the day he left for coffee. That was when he understood I had not been throwing a tantrum. I had been gone before he came home. Vanessa, he admitted, had only wanted to see if he would still choose her. When he refused to sleep with her for old time's sake, she disappeared. I threw us away for nothing, he wrote. I finally understand what I lost. I read it once, then I clicked delete. His understanding was not my closure. His regret was not my responsibility. The apartment he inherited was quiet because he had emptied it himself. The future he mourned was one he locked me out of first, and for the first time, I let his consequences belong entirely to him. 2 months later, I was sitting in a booth at the Grizzly Bear, a pub Caleb and I had never visited together. That detail mattered more than I expected. No ghost of his jacket over a chair. No memory of him reaching across the table to steal fries from my plate. No corner where we had once argued softly while pretending to smile. The place belonged to no version of us. It was loud, messy, and honest, full of dartboards, scratched wooden tables, spilled beer, and people who were not trying to turn love into a power game. I had found an apartment by then. 3rd floor, exposed brick, narrow kitchen, one big window that caught morning light. It was not perfect, but it was mine. My name on the lease. My furniture arranged where I wanted it. My coffee mugs in cabinets Caleb had never touched. For the first time in years, I slept without waiting for a conversation to turn into a test. That night, I was with 2 of my oldest friends, Mike and Lauren. They had both watched me become quieter during my relationship with Caleb, though neither said it bluntly until after I left him. Mike called him a man who thought charm was a payment plan. Lauren said Caleb had always seemed like someone who wanted a girlfriend and an audience at the same time. I laughed when they said it, but it landed somewhere deep, because they were right. Caleb had not wanted a partner. He wanted someone available when his ego needed a mirror. The air smelled like fried food and beer. A darts game was getting rowdy in the corner. I was relaxed in a way that still felt new, one arm resting along the back of the booth, a cold pint in front of me, laughing while Mike told a story about his disastrous golf lesson with a client who apparently swung like he was trying to kill bees. Then the door opened. I saw Caleb immediately. He came in with Derek, his loyal little messenger, the friend who had called me from a hotel room to tell me a good woman would forgive betrayal if the man cried hard enough afterward. Derek looked around first, then Caleb stepped beside him, and for a second, he did not see me. He looked thinner, not broken in some romantic way, just worn down, like he had expected regret to make him noble, and instead it had only made him tired. Then his eyes found mine. Something desperate lit in his face. Hope, hunger, disbelief, all of it at once. His gaze moved over me, the booth, my friends, my relaxed shoulders, the glass in my hand. I watched him register the most important part. I was not performing devastation. I was not alone in a dark room waiting for his apology to give my life permission to continue. I was already here, present. Alive. Untangled. I looked away first, turning back to Mike's story as if Caleb were just another person entering a pub. That was not cruelty. It was the truth. He was no longer the center of the room. A shadow fell over the table a minute later. I looked up. Caleb stood there with his hands half curled at his sides. Derek hovered a few feet behind him, sour-faced and useless, like a guard dog who had realized the gate was already closed. "Darlene," Caleb said. His voice was fragile, almost swallowed by the noise of the pub. "Hi." I gave him the kind of polite nod I might give a former coworker at the grocery store. "Caleb?" His eyes flicked to Mike and Lauren, then back to me. "You look good." "Thank you." The simplicity of my answer seemed to unsettle him. He had probably rehearsed this moment a dozen ways. Maybe he imagined anger, maybe tears, maybe the visible crack in my voice that would prove he still had access. Instead, I was calm, and my calmness was a locked door. He swallowed. "Can we talk for a minute?" Lauren's hand moved slightly toward mine under the table, not touching, just there. Mike leaned back and watched Caleb with the quiet expression of a man deciding whether he needed to stand up. I did not need rescuing. "We can talk here," I said. Caleb's face tightened. He wanted privacy. Privacy was where he could bend the story, soften the details, make "you're not invited" sound like bad phrasing instead of a verdict. But I was done meeting men in rooms where they got to control the lighting. He took a breath. "I miss you." The words came out cracked and careful, laid at my feet like an offering. I looked at him and felt nothing shift inside me. Not hate, not love, not even satisfaction. Just a calm, clean distance. "I miss you," Caleb said again, softer this time, as if repetition might make the sentence heavier. "What I did was stupid. The stupidest thing I've ever done. Vanessa meant nothing. You meant everything." He stood there in the noise of the pub, trying to turn public humiliation into romance, trying to make himself look brave because he had finally said the words after the consequences had arrived. I looked at his face, the face I had once imagined across dinner tables, hospital waiting rooms, birthdays, ordinary Tuesdays. I had loved that face. I had trusted it. I had almost put a ring on a finger attached to a man who could look me in the eye and say I was not invited into my own future. Caleb took my silence as permission to continue. "She used me," he said, voice cracking. "Vanessa just wanted to know if she still had power over me. She wanted attention. She wanted to see if I'd choose her. And I was an idiot. I let my ego get in the way. But nothing happened, I swear. Nothing that matters happened." I almost smiled at that. Nothing that matters. Men like Caleb always think betrayal begins with a body. They never understand that sometimes the knife is already in before anyone touches anyone else. Sometimes betrayal is a button-down shirt, cologne, a hidden smile at a phone, and the sentence, "You're not invited." I placed my glass on the coaster with a soft click. What happened with Vanessa is not the point. His brow folded. "Then what is? Because I've apologized. I've admitted I was wrong. What else do you want from me?" That question told me everything. Even now, he thought my pain was a problem to solve so he could get back what he lost. He was not asking because he wanted to understand. He was asking because he wanted the right password. "I don't want anything from you," I said. The words landed harder than anger would have. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Behind him, Derek shifted, suddenly less confident now that the scene was not bending in Caleb's favor. Mike leaned forward, but I lifted one hand slightly. "I had this." Caleb swallowed. "Darlene, please. We were going to get engaged. We had a life." "No," I said calmly. I had a life planned. You had options. His eyes flashed, hurt turning briefly into anger. That's not fair. Neither was standing in our apartment dressed for your ex-girlfriend and telling me I wasn't invited. He looked away then, and for the first time, I saw not regret, but the shape of defeat. He had expected the story to still belong to him. He had expected the woman he left in the sunlight that morning to be waiting somewhere inside me, still holding the receipt, still aching for an explanation good enough to undo everything. But she was gone. I had packed her with the boxes, carried her out and left her somewhere between the apartment parking lot and the first hotel room where I slept alone, without begging to be chosen. I was scared, he whispered. You were serious. We were serious. Vanessa felt easy because she was the past. You were the future. And I panicked. There it was, the polished version. Vulnerability wrapped around selfishness. I could almost admire the craftsmanship. I hope you figure out why you panic when someone loves you, I said. But you don't get to practice healing on me. His face crumpled. So that's it? Yes. After everything? I looked at him for a long moment. That was a different life. The pub moved around us, glasses clinked. Someone laughed near the dartboard. A server squeezed past with a tray of wings. The world kept going, indifferent and merciful. I've made my peace, I said. I'm happy in this one, and you're not in it. For a few seconds, Caleb just stood there. The desperate hope in his eyes went out slowly, like a light dimmed by someone in another room. He finally understood. Not that I was angry. Not that I was punishing him. That would have comforted him, because anger still means connection. He understood that I was free of him. Derek gave me a venomous look as Caleb turned away, but even that felt distant, childish, irrelevant. They walked out together, Caleb's shoulders bent in a way I might once have rushed to fix. I stayed seated. Mike exhaled. Who was that? I picked up my glass, felt the faintest real smile touch my mouth, and turned back to my friends. No one, I said. No one at all. The conversation moved on. The darts game got louder. The night kept breathing around me. 2 months earlier, I thought losing Caleb meant losing my future. Now I understood the truth. I had not lost the future. I had recovered it from a man careless enough to leave it unattended while he went for coffee.